Hi, I'm Prema and welcome to Instinct and Money Masterclass. How many times have I said that today? Masterclass. And I want to thank you for being here. This is a how-to summit. This is a how-to interview, but it's not even really an interview. It's really about it being a masterclass for you to help you to connect with how can you manifest what it is that you want to manifest, whether that's a business, whether it's the next project, whether it's just money. Maybe you just want money. And even more so than just need, I really want to talk to you about manifesting what you want, what your heart's desires really are. And so I have an awesome guest to share with you today. And Odette Laurie is a professional speaker, author, and business coach for entrepreneurs who want to make serious money in their business and create the life they truly desire. And her first business at the age of 27 started with a whim and grew into a 7-figure success story. And Odette has written 2 books, Profit Domination, How Successful Women Get on Top and Stay There, 201 Rules for the Road, and an account of her personal tragedies while building women on top in her most recent book, Paralyzed, Getting Past the Excuses of Why You Aren't Successful. The rest of Odette's bio is right there on the page for if you'd like to read that, but I want to get her in front of you. So Odette, welcome. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, how are you? Thank you so much.
Awesome. So we are going to dive right in, and your story is fascinating, and you have trusted yourself, beyond a lot of people actually, to have the business that you have today, to manifest the life that you're living today. And what I'd love for you to jump in with is, how did you know to actually be able to, trust your intuition, trust your instincts, trust that gut feeling that told you to actually do the business that you're doing, have the career that you're having, and you have a continued journey of having to, like we all do, but yours is pretty extreme, of really having to trust your gut continually, even though faced with some hardship on the way. What's that? How did you know how to trust?
That's a fabulous question. I never actually really thought of it that way, as in trusting. It was more of I just do what I do. I need to do this. I have to do this. There was nothing else for me to do. And it was just it's a really great way to put it. I think I needed to, I wanted to, and there's nothing that was going to stop me. And I didn't even think of anything else. And I realized, especially at that point, I knew that it was sink or swim. And when you're at the situation that I had with my story, it was the future was wiped out with the relationship. The past was gone with my parents passing away. If any of your listeners know what that's like, you feel like an orphan. You're just all of a sudden, you're like, oh, wow, I'm alone. And you just do what you got to do. So it was more of a sense of innate need to survive. And I have 2 teenage daughters, and at the time, so they were in grade 8 and 6, so quite young. That it was just, I have to be that role model, and I gotta just put on my big girl panties and just go for it. And that's all that I had in my head. I think a few years later, I went, wow, okay, so take a breath and realize, what did I just do? Where am I headed? So it was a few years in that I actually took stock of all of that.
What I love about that is, like you're saying, you didn't think of it that way, because for you, it was either sink or swim, and you were choosing to swim. But what I see with some people is that, they sink or swim, and they'll focus more on the sink than on the swim, even though the swim is what they really want. I've raised teenagers on my own as well. I lost my mom and my kid's dad even, and not while I was married to him, but I'm just even bring that up because I get it, life happens, So, something you did very naturally, which was fight for your life, fight for what you wanted, basically, to really swim. What would you say to those people who are not in that extreme of a situation? Because a lot of people aren't. You want to manifest what you want, whether it's that, the business, the next lump sum of money that you want for whatever it is. And you don't have that fire underneath you that's causing you to really decide sink or swim, and I think that's what happens for a lot of people. The mediocrity is just kind of sitting there. So how do we help get those people in motion?
Well, when I first started with Women on Top, I hired a business coach. This was before I knew I was going to be a coach. I had, lost my job and decided, what am I going to do? And so I hired this guy, and it was what was called the $200 cup of coffee. So I sat down with him and I didn't even know what I was sitting down for. And he said to me, okay, so tell me, what is it that you want? And I kind of laughed because I went and I had no idea. And I said, you know what? I haven't the foggiest idea. But that's when sort of the switch went off. And it was like, you know what? I don't know what I want, but I know what I don't want. And I went to a long explanation of all the things that I didn't want. So when people, when I'm speaking and people are talking to me, or I have, prospects or clients, the first question that I have is, what do you want? And it is the hardest question most women are faced with and have a struggle to answer. Often you ask a guy what they want and they'll just tell you everything. They'll talk forever, right? And with a woman, it's a little bit different. So it's about getting to the root of what it is that you want. And often it's, okay, well, what don't you want? And then it's a little bit easier to get to that place. And then I circle back around with, okay, well, what do you want? If fear wasn't an issue, if money wasn't an issue, if let's face it, if you didn't have, the children or the spouse or the partners or the friends that you had, what would you want? Because I want to get women connected to that deep desire. And then it becomes safe for them to tell me what they want. And from there, we're able to pull on that string and say, okay, let's start going for it one step at a time. Now, there's a lot of women like me and you who just go, I know what I want, I'm going to go for it, and I don't stop. And, are we looked upon as aggressive or assertive or scary or all these things? Maybe. But we need to be there for the people that don't have that kind of same natural fire. Because let's face it, we all have a dream, we all have something special that we want, but we default to what we think we deserve or what we think we can get. And that is a really sad place to be. Because if you aren't stepping into what you want and getting what you want, who else isn't? Namely, your children, maybe family members, whatever. But there's always someone who's going to suffer because you're not stepping into your deepest desires.
Well, it's so very true. And, sometimes it does. It takes going through that back door of, knowing what you don't want, exploring what you don't want, that, kind of opens the gate up for what it is that you do want. And, a piece of brain science recently that I came across was that we just don't dream big enough, first of all. And we can tend to overestimate what we want in a year's period of time. And people have done that and then they've been disappointed. But in a 3-year period of time, brain science shows that we tend to underestimate by 50% what's actually possible for us. So if we can reach out a little bit farther, because we've got to get some kind of big dream going for ourselves in order to have something to actually pull us forward and a why to live into that. You had some big whys that was life, facing you in the face to give you those whys. But when you don't have that kind of extreme situation, you need to dig for why it's important. That's a really big piece of that. So when you're working with women, because you work mainly with women entrepreneurs, is that correct?
I do.
Okay. And what is the biggest why that you find in working with women entrepreneurs, why they even want to build their business?
Because they want to change the world.
Yeah, me too.
They want to change the world. They, they've got these great visions of saving, lives, basically, whether they be animals or babies or, in a third world country, regardless. But in order to change someone else's life, you need to change your life first. You can't do anything with anyone in a grander scale until you step into exactly what it is that you want and then go after it. And, I think that women typically lose sight of that because we're nurturers and let's help the world, save the world. But when we look at our own life and, it's this kind of a cold, hard reality that, well, let me ask my husband if I can invest that money. Let me ask my partner. Let me see if I can do it if the kids schedule. And, it's heartbreaking and it's, and another thing, it's a little bit hypocritical. It's like, okay, you want to step into something so great and so big, but yet you need your permission to spend $1,500 or something like that.
Right.
And And that really bothers me, and that's a sore spot for me. I've actually had people say to me, well, you have it easy because you don't have a husband. You don't have someone you have to answer to. And I chuckle because, okay, no, but it's all up to me. So I don't have another income in order to rely on. It is up to me. So does that make me lucky? Not sure. But it's, everybody can look at it from a different perspective and say, you have it easier, you have it better.
Well, and what I like, what you're saying and what you're pointing to that I'd love to dive in a little deeper with you is, because this is a feminine dilemma, and I work with women around this all the time, and I'd love to hear your take on this, which is how, you've got to put yourself first. You have to put yourself first, and in order to, create whatever it is that you want, in order to manifest whatever you want. So how is it that you're helping, how do you see the best way to help women or to actually take that step to put themselves first when they're in that place you're talking about, when they're just not the ones that you can move across the line, okay? Actually to,
Yeah. So sorry, what specifically was the question?
So the question is in the premise that it's important to put yourself first, and especially as women, we need to put ourselves first before we can make a difference for anybody else. What do you feel is, how do you get past that point of not feeling like you're worthy or whatever, when it's hard to put yourself first? How do you get, a woman across that line so that she can then do what she really wants to do?
Well, it's really dissecting and getting emotionally connected to what it is that you want, making that emotional connection, and taking a look at what are the consequences if you don't get there. How is it going to make you feel? What is that going to do to your life, your kid's life? And magnifying that, because there's a consequence to everything that we do or don't do. And we are on this earth a really short time. So it is about the legacy that we're going to leave. And, for every woman, it is different. But getting that emotional connection to both what is it they want and what is it that they don't want, and what will happen if they don't attain it. See, the thing with the dream is that it is just that. It's typically a dream, and it's never been experienced. So for instance, if you want to make $1 million, if you've never made $1 million, it's very hard to be connected to that. You don't know what that feels like. So it's almost the reverse of, this business, I'm going to do whatever it takes because I'm never getting a job. Because you know what it feels like to have a job, and a job that you don't like, and a job that's making you 30 grand, and it's not enough. To get emotionally connected to that pain, to take a look back and go and keep running away from that as much as possible. And what do you need to do to get away from that? Because fear is way more expensive than taking a risk. And when you take a look, what the possibility is for a risk, when you're doing what you want to do, chances are you're going to get there. When you're doing what you don't want to do, or in a place of fear, what happens? You create more of that. And it's just that understanding that you're on this earth for a short time. It really isn't about us. It's about the legacy that we leave and the footprint that we leave. And for some women, they get that because they go, okay, then it's not really about me, it's about my children. And then they can step into it far greater. However you need to do to step into it, it doesn't matter. Even if you're just tricking yourself, who cares?
Who cares? I love I love this that you just said, which is fear is more expensive than a risk. I mean, think about that, everyone, for a moment. Fear is something you're making up. It's not happening. It's false evidence appearing real. If something really happens, your instinctual system knows how to get away from the fire, get out of the middle of the street, But, fear is way more expensive than taking a risk. I mean, what's the cost of being in fear? Absolutely. But I think that when it comes to taking what feels like a risk, a lot of people just don't know how to take that risk, how to take that leap. For myself, I lived on my own since I was really young, and I took a lot of risks because that's just what life presented to me. It was like that was the only door that was open, And I know creating a business and an entrepreneurial venture definitely can feel like a risk. So how do you work with women and what do you suggest for your clients as far as, I don't want to say minimizing the risk, but making the risk more palatable for them, or getting them to the place where the risk doesn't even feel like a risk anymore?
It's a big question. Number one is when you make that decision to take that leap of faith, then you got to go for it. You enough with the mind games of, okay, I'm going to take the risk and go do it, but I'm going to trickle out. And analogy that I have that I just started using with myself actually and with my clients is that if you take a rocket, so a rocket wants to go to the moon or is going to go to the moon. How does a rocket get to the moon? Because there's a force field, right? There's that energy field, whatever the hell you call it, right? But a rocket needs to have an incredible amount of jet fuel just to take off, just to get off the ground. And so it needs to get off the ground. And then as it gets off the ground, it creates that momentum and it starts to go through the first couple of layers of the force field. And then it gets to the actual force field where the rocket is shaking. The people in the astronauts are worried they're going to blow up and they're going to burn out. And so there's a lot of fear for when the rocket gets through that force field. But once it penetrates, Earth's gravity, what happens? They float. It's bliss. It's spatial. It's relaxing. They can turn off the engines. And then they get to the moon. And the force field for us is that psychological barrier. So if you want to build a business and you're ready to go, and then you say, well, I'm just going to do it off of pennies and passion and, going to do it by myself, you don't get that lift off. And you need an incredible amount of jet fuel just to get off the ground. And so that's mistake number one. And then it's going to be a shaky ride, people. Don't expect it to be green light all the way. And that's what so many people want. They just want green light the whole way. I mean, don't we all? But to get through that psychological barrier requires a tremendous amount of effort, mindset, marketing and strategy, and, maybe some hoping and praying that you're not going to burn out. But when you're focused on that goal, whether it be financial or whatever it is, that once you break that psychological barrier, you're done. You're good. You're golden. It's going to be smooth sailing. So will that be rocky? Yes. I think too many entrepreneurs have this false sense of I've got the passion and it's going to be easy and I just want flow and I just want, to rub my earlobes and it's going to work. No, it is long hours. Sometimes, my first business, I met a couple of times, we went 24-hour cycles to get stuff done. It's about doing what you have to do to break that psychological barrier. And when you do, you're going to be so thankful.
I love that. And that psychological barrier, it is on the other side of that is when you actually can get into flow, because then you have it in your mindset knows that no matter what, you're just going to work through it. And you're going to keep working through it. You knew to do that. You knew to stay through the shakiness of it. You knew to keep going when you were paralyzed. You knew to, keep going when you lost your parents. So again, you had to continue to trust, this, what was pulling you, your big why, whatever was pulling you, beyond all of this. So at some point you broke the psychological barrier. I'm curious for you where that was in your journey.
It's a good question, because when I was 27 and I had my first business, and people, they say, well, you've done it once, it should be easy the second time. And I'll admit, I think it was easier the first time. I was 27, I had no money. We didn't know what the heck we were doing. Canada was in a recession. Our interest rates were 20, 22, 23%. And my partner actually went bankrupt prior to us starting the business, or I had started the business. And I was just like, I'm just doing what I'm doing. Not one person said my idea was great. Not one person said I could do it. Not one person supported me except we had just gotten married, so my husband at the time. And it was just like you just did what you did. And it was a couple of false starts, because I'm like, I'm going to do the business, and then, no, I'm too scared, I'm going to go get a job. And then I'd be fired, and that happened like three times. So I just kind of did it. And this time around it was totally different. I have kids, I'm on my own. Coaching is totally different than just what I was doing before. It's very personable. So I think what got me motivated to keep going was I did not want to go get a job. I hated working for somebody else. It wasn't a good fit for me. And the fact that I had started, I had invested time, energy, and money. And it was just one of those things I just hunkered down and said, let's go. Was it scary? Oh, yeah. I mean, it was scary for years, and it still is scary, right? Because every time you take your business to the next level, there's another psychological barrier that you need to go through, and they're not necessarily as hard as the first one. But and for me, I would, and because I'm a business coach, I'm very partial to this, is that you have to have a coach, not your friend and your girlfriends or your pretend mentor or someone that you know that you meet once a month or some sort of bull. And that, like, that's just ridiculous. If you're in business, get a business coach and pay for it, because there's a whole bunch of accountability when you got a lot of money on the line. And the best investment is in yourself. Don't invest in a website and social media and all of that stuff first, because that's not going to make you the money. It is you that's going to make the money.
That's so absolutely true. I have 2 mentors myself. That was one of the big mistakes that I made in my, I had a yoga and healing arts center years ago, and it was a 6-figure business of sales, but I wasn't taking home hardly anything myself. Right. And that was a whole journey I won't go into now. But the moral of the story there is that I help people understand their wealth code. And it was kind of too late in my journey there before I realized what my downfall and where I was not in alignment with the way not only I'm wired for wealth, but everybody is. And that was around support. And I didn't have that support. So when I left that business and I got everything lined up, I had to sell some things. I had to borrow some money. I was really starting from nothing again. And when I went into a whole different private practice and upper level business, but not housing a center and people and all that. Yeah. And I hired a business coach. I hired someone to handle my finances. I took my spiritual mentor back on that I that was all a big leap, but I knew there was no way I could do what I had set out to do. I couldn't do it alone, and nor are we supposed to do it alone. And we're just not. We're just not,
What makes me, it's not even so much laugh. You, for some reason, when someone says, I want to start a business, and because they're great at their art or their craft or their passion or whatever, that's amazing. But you got taught somehow, some way to learn your art, craft, or passion. That just because you want to be an entrepreneur doesn't mean you know how to do it. Because it is a skill, there is a strategy, there is, right from wrong, there is step 1, step 2, step 3. And you got to be taught how to do that. And I have a mindset coach, I have a marketing coach, a branding coach. What's going to get in my way is my head. And no matter how great I am or how much money I make, there's always something in my head that's going to get in the way. And often it's ego, fear, and all of those kinds of things. But you can't see your blind spots. You don't know what you don't know because you don't know it. And just be okay with that. And be coachable.
That it's so true, and I think that's also kind of at a deep spiritual level. We are not like babies need to be held. We need to be in community. We can't see ourselves in the eyes. We don't know what we don't know. We actually really do need each other, which is actually makes this a much better harmonious place. When we welcome, and we all have gifts, and if everybody's really giving their gift, there's always somebody who's got what you don't have. And that's a really beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. And I think for women, that as community minded as we are and hearted as we are, because of the way society has been, and we've just become more nuclear in having, to do things and feel like we have to do it alone, or that we personally have to do it all, So I love what you're saying, and, get that support, get that guidance. It's really, you're exactly right. The only thing that's going to get in your way is what's in your head. And as you stretch and grow, there'll still be things that get in our way. So it's important to have someone and it's like that insurance of like, I'm going to keep going. If I've got that support, I'm going to keep going. And that's the only way you get there, no matter, and even if you're just, in the place of like, okay, I'm not an entrepreneur, although I don't want a business, you still are, in service in some way in the world. You're still manifesting money in some way. And whatever it is that you are wanting to manifest next for yourself, if you keep going, you will actually manifest it. The only thing is that we stop sometimes, So that keeping going is so very important. So what would you suggest, as aside from getting help, of course, something personally that people can do on their own to help manage their head so that they do keep going?
Pad yourself up with, well, start with people. Get rid of anybody that's negative. And yes, sometimes they're your husbands or your sisters or your mothers, fathers. And it was funny because my parents were very entrepreneurial. And when I did my first business, they were flatly, adamant that I shouldn't do it. And I'm like, I don't get it. You did it. Your guys were successful, but maybe they knew the pitfalls. But it doesn't matter. So you are the sum of your 5 closest people or your friends and the people that are around you. So take a look at who's around you. You don't need to learn from the people that are around you. Just because your father and mother, and even if they do support you, doesn't mean they need to teach you how to build a business. Get business support from someone who has actually built what you have or is making the money that you want. And the second thing is pad yourself up with educational tools, whether they be reading videos or, like this summit. There's a lot of great information out there. Be in constant flow and energy of the knowledge. Who's your favorite, who do you aspire to be like? Who's your favorite entrepreneur? I'll just use Oprah. Follow her, study her. What did she do? How did she get started? Richard Branson, Marianne Williamson, whatever. And I personally recently have gone down a little bit more of a spiritual journey, and really it's fascinating what I'm reading. And I am a sponge. So be a sponge for that kind of knowledge. And it's almost like feel the feelings, let them come, because the fear's a feeling and it's allowed to be present in your world. But it's not, what's not allowed is the 7 trillion negative thoughts that are associated with that feeling. And you can choose to think positively or you can choose to think negatively. You really do have that choice. So if you are in that space, have a chant, have a huddle, have an SOS thing on your wall, like whatever it is that you got to do. But it's just about cover all the senses.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm continually brainwashing myself because that's what
That's the perfect word. Yeah,
that's what it takes. And if you think about brainwashing, I mean, you're bringing the good stuff in, you're washing the stuff that doesn't work out, and if you just get in the habit of doing that in a preventative way, I'm just a sponge too. Then it's really, really, really helpful. And I think building your, being an entrepreneur is one of the most amazing spiritual journeys, actually, if you really hang in with it, because you're going to have to face every piece of yourself. You're going to, you will. And so what we're talking about today is how to get through some of the stuff that you're facing about yourself that maybe isn't so palatable or makes you want to stop, so that you go ahead and keep on going. So Odette has a free gift to share with you today, and as you can tell, you're going to want some more of her brilliance, and it's her email coaching series, which the button for is right below our video. Would you share with them what's that about and what they're going to get with that?
Well, when I wrote my first book, Profit Domination, How Successful Women Get on Top and Stay There, 201 Rules for the Road, is I'm a big believer of affirmations, inspiration, and all of that. We don't have necessarily a lot of time to read, and so I put together this book that just had quotes, and I made it colorful, so I made it very visual, but very impactful quotes or rules for the road. And so what I did was I decided, a lot of people love the book, they rip it out, put it on their vision board. A lot of people live by those rules. And so what I decided to do was to have it in someone's inbox and deliver it sort of one step at a time. And I decided to put the 12 pieces together, so like the 12 step. We resonate with the whole 12 step of anything. Because it's not a simple step and it's not done in 3 steps. And it was about how to get the mindset, marketing, and money. Those are, to me, the 3 pillar foundations of building a business. You've got the mindset stuff, you've got the marketing piece, and you've got the money piece. So I put that into an email drip, an email sequence, so that you get constant reminders about, oh yeah, it's about the money. Oh yeah, it's about the numbers. Oh yes, it's about the mindset. It's fun. It's exciting. There's homework. There's tips. There's access to a lot of my video training, my audios. Really a lot. When I talked about being that sponge, I wanted to to be that sponge for people. So I put it into a sequence, and an opportunity for people to jump on the phone with me for a complimentary session to kind of check in and see what's working, what's not working. So I think that often there's this false sense of reality of that magic bullet, and there isn't one. So when I put this 12-step together, it really does show you all the pieces of the puzzle.
So it's more the magic bullets. You need all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. You see, you hone it in so nicely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So again, the link is right below our video, so grab that. And Odette, thank you so much for being here with us today. Is there anything else you want to say to our audience before we sign off for the day?
In order to make a change, you take something that I've said today or that you've learned on this summit, whether it be me or it doesn't matter who it is, but take something and put it into action in the next 24 hours. Do it immediately. Don't leave these calls and be really high on life and go, oh my God, this is so amazing, this is so wonderful, and then do nothing. Pick one thing, do it in the next 24 hours, and then do another thing 24 hours after that. Always be doing something that is of major action, not just feeling really good and calling a girlfriend. I mean, do something in your business. Pick up the phone and make a sales call. Do something that is going to drive your business that much, one step closer to your dream.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your wisdom and your brilliance and your heart with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. And welcome back tomorrow for another edition of Instinct and Money. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye-bye.